Hi, Tara Ciccone here. Welcome to the Josh Groban Tour. I'm going to finally do a rig rundown after 11 years. Let's get started with some guitars. So welcome to Guitar World. I'm going to go through some of my instruments. I have more out here than we're using for the show, just to show you what I bring out, just in case some songs come up. A lot of people have asked me about this one. This is a James Tyler that Jim made for me specifically to match my buddy Michael Thompson's guitar. It actually has a specific preamp in it that Michael can tell you about, Fralin pickups, ash body, maple neck, and it's a really, really chimey sound. But even though I've had it for years, it's almost pristine because it really only gets used for certain studio sessions and specific songs. In here, I've also got my Telecaster that I'm going to go relatively quickly through these. This one is named Clarence for Clarence White, and it's the one that I use for most of my country stuff and Americana stuff. Typically, it's got a capo up here, and it actually has replacement pickups. This one is one of my favorites. It's actually a power jet that I got from Gretsch years ago. Love this guitar. I used to use this on What I Did for Love and a couple of other songs in the Josh Groban camp. And then this is the first PRS I fell in love with. This is a PRS DGT that I actually got from Win over at PRS, and I got it for, I believe, a TV show, and it was a floor model, and I fell in love with it, and I basically told him whatever he did, he wasn't able to get this one back. This was going to be mine. And I've used this on countless TV shows, and I actually used that with Jennifer Nettles on the last tour. This is my SG, which was for years tuned to open E, but I started falling in love with the SG look again, so I started using this for everything from power chords to slide to even ambient stuff, doing my old kind of Bill Frisell type of thing. Then we have actually a couple of odd ones like my Taylor 12 string, which is incredible. And this is Mabel, which is, if I had to choose a number one, this is one of my number ones. Mabel is actually a 1964 Gretsch Chet Atkins that I use for a lot of Americana stuff. It's been modified a little bit with a palm bender for the Bigsby. But I'd use this one for more than one would think because it's not only versatile, but there's just something about it that when you've got that big body, it likes to resonate. Over here, these are being used for the show. This is a Taylor, I believe it's a 618, and I started using this when I needed a featured guitar for Somewhere Over the Rainbow because it just sits with the orchestra so incredibly well. And with Josh, that's something you always have to think about is how it's going to speak with the orchestra. So that's great for finger picking and stuff like that. And then this is an older Lemon Grove Taylor, and you can see I've already put some wear and tear on the body. But this one, I actually replaced my early D35. I wanted something on the road, but it sounded so good. Now this gets used for all my dreadnought strumming stuff, some finger picking. I've got the Gibson Hummingbird here, which I also use for finger picking, and both of these have the retro strings on them, which I absolutely adore. That's become a big change for me. And then this is, my number one acoustic for years was a Yamaha custom-built acoustic. But, and I love that guitar, it's such a classical sound. I wanted something more for flamenco sound on the last tour. So I got this from Dacasia and put an LR Baggs pickup in here. And this has been my number one kind of flamenco instrument for all the Spanish stuff I have to do. Incredible guitar, sounds amazing. And all of my studio friends like Paul Jackson and even my buddy Andy Abad and whatnot have asked me about that guitar on the rig. And I have to say, I've rarely had, for that sound, a nylon string translate like that to the front of house. So it's for all my featured Spanish stuff. And then this is the old, I call this the medium rare steak. This is my Gibson S, this is a jumbo, it's a J150. I got this when I was with the Backstreet Boys, and it's grown into an incredible instrument. And I call it my Impress Your Friends, Frighten Your Enemies guitar, because look at that back, and look at the wood on there. Yeah, that's right, get in there close. So scooting back, these are also getting used in the show. I've got my PRS Silver Sky, which is a remarkably good sounding Stratocaster sound. I know I'm not supposed to say that, but I got this also from Win for a TV show I did, Don't Forget the Lyrics, recently, and was amazed at how well this reads for that classic kind of Strat sound. And I used this with Cyndi Lauper recently. This is my 1967 Jazzmaster that I had to bring on the road just because I felt like it made me cooler. But I love this instrument. I actually borrowed this from Glenn Phillips from Toad the Wet Sprocket, but Glenn knows he's never getting this back. So I can't say I stole it because he's aware I have it. This is my other Tyler, which is a 1997. This guitar belonged to my buddy Greg Walton from Exact Tone Solutions pedals, and I played it, fell in love with it, but didn't want to buy it because I wasn't really in the market for a Tyler at the time. Dreamt about it for about a year and decided I had to go get it. All this checkering I put on myself, and if you can get in there close, you can see it used to be pristine, and a lot of this happened, that checkering behind the paint, it happened on one trip to Poland because we went to Poland, it was icy outside, and something happened where it cracked underneath the paint. But that's kind of my other number one, if I gotta fight you. And then this is the White Falcon, which I have recently named Priscilla. This one, I fell in love with and has been using for the past probably 4 or 5, maybe 6 years, because Priscilla just has a tone that's big and wide, and especially for Josh, there's so much going on, it just speaks and takes up a little bit more space. And also with Josh, I'm not playing a lot of fast, flashy stuff. It's more big chords and having a presence. So same thing with this Duesenberg, and my cigar buddy down in Orange County, he knows who he is, got this guitar for me, and it's turned into a bit of a number one. I mean, this has this, it's not just because it's got that gorgeous red, sparkle finish, but it's a big sounding instrument and just has a presence, and also being semi-hollow, it has a certain warmth to it. As does this one, which is my 335. I got this when I was doing the Grammys, and Gibson was lovely enough to kind of give me this instrument. But I always wanted a 335 with a Bigsby, and this one just has a warm, wonderful tone, and it's kind of my go-to if I gotta fight you these days. And then thank you to D'Angelico for this gorgeous arch top. I use this obviously for all the jazz stuff, fingerstyle stuff, and with Josh, it's like it has such a great tone to kind of play against the acoustic piano, because this gig is a lot of acoustic instruments, a lot of acoustic sounds, and casting guitars for different purposes. So now that we've taken a look at the electrics and all that stuff, let's take a look at the acoustic rig. You'll see that my command center is actually up there, but fundamentally my entire rig is based off of the radial Fireflies. I got turned on to these by Nathan East, and he's so in love with the Fireflies, he wrote a song for Foreplay called Firefly. They're incredible sounding tube DIs, and they have 2 channels each, so they're not only allocated to each individual guitar, but what I found is when you use some different kinds of preamps and EQ in your acoustic rig, especially in something like this, like an arena, you're a lot of times fighting the EQ of the front of house engineer. Because let's say I want to dip out 250 and he decides he wants more 250, now we're introducing phase. So what I started doing is just giving them incredible signal, and then my monitor engineer sets it up for my individual mix, and he gets the full signal up there for his individual mix. So this is obviously 4 of the Fireflies, and then this is the switching system. And my tech Trevor, who's actually holding one of these cameras, Trevor actually does all the switching over here for me, from acoustic to acoustic, and then let's go up on the deck and I'll show you the command center. All right, so let's go through the actual rig. You'll see that I have a somewhat compact rig, but it's pretty powerful. I used to run a wet, dry, wet rig, but I realized that it was a little unwieldy, and especially if you don't have people that you trust in different venues, it's a little more difficult. I mean, I trust Mickey, my friend house guy, we've been working together for 20 years, and all the guys here, but I found it a little more conducive to live performance to have just a stereo rig. And this actually was conceptualized. I was working on a movie, and I had to work with a bunch of strings and percussion, so I had to find a way to get my rig stereo with a quiet sound, because everything was on one soundstage. So essentially the signal chain is my guitar goes through a bunch of pedals, hits the Bradshaw, which is down here, hits the Bradshaw, goes through the Bradshaw pedals, which include, oops, let me do this, which include my, you see a Cali 76 compressor, my RC booster, my Shanks ODR or ODU S1. This is basically, we know what that is, but it's the aluminum Falcon, the Winford drive, and my H9, actually that's in a loop. It hits all those things, then it actually goes into the helix, goes out to the amp, so the amp is actually in a loop of the helix. That's why it's getting stepped down with the SIR reactive load. And it goes through those, comes back into the helix, and that's where I get all of my stereo effects. And once again, the H9 is in a loop also. So what that allows me to do is not only control the volume, because then it comes out to the power amp, But if I wanted to, on a different gig, for instance, I could use any of the amp modeling that's actually in the Helix. I can use stereo effects, I can be mono, I can do everything from just mono with like an overdrive to wide stereo sounds and all of that stuff. And I found that this is an incredibly versatile rig. The Helix is incredibly easy to program. So my friend over at Line 6, we've been talking about this, but when I discovered the Helix architecture, I started using it for everything. So I literally have the Helix floor now, the HX effects, the HX native, and I'm using this rack piece because that also means that I can switch between. If I've got to download these sounds into my Helix floor, I can do that, travel to Japan, do a TV show, and have the exact same sounds. And it's so easy to program. I normally have my computer up here, going through programming, getting all of that in there, and then it's locked in for the show. So let me show you the command center, kind of what's going on with the rig over here. Not only, first of all, I'm running through my divided by 13 FTR37. Thank you, Fred. And we have a 915 back there that doesn't get used for this particular show. And then this is their 212 cabinet. So what I'm doing coming out of the Carvin is I'm going stereo through this 212 cabinet, which has two different speakers. And the microphones I'm using are the AEA N22s, which are ribbons. And what's great about those is they almost sound like a Royer 121 and an SM57, the way we as guitar players love to run them. But because they also have side rejection, I'm running stereo and you get a wide stereo spectrum even though it's all in one cabinet. So when you hear the tones, you'll hear it bouncing back and forth left to right, but it's all coming out of this. And this is something I turned our front of house engineer onto and he fell in love with them. These are my favorite microphones right now. Once again, they're the AEA N22s. And then we can talk about my command center over here. So basically, in this world, you can see I've got a bunch of different jobs. I have to be a guitar player, I have to be a musical director, and I also have to play acoustic. So this runs my acoustic rig and just allows me to have volume, and the SGI 44 allows me for longer cable runs to go straight back to the rig. And then once again, Trevor actually does all the work to swap things in and out. And then here I've got volume and tuner. So when Trevor even puts my Gracie stand, which you'll see up, I can just step forward into the volume and step back and go from acoustic to electric. Then here you'll see I have another John Shanks because I love John. Shout out to John Shanks and his taste in pedals. This is his 3-knob, which is basically like a treble booster. Then I've got the quartz, which I use for all of my delays and my timing. The Chase Tone, which is kind of an always on pedal, and then my Strobel Stomp for all my tuning. And then I use the Helix for all my control for instant access and all my patch changes. But this way, literally, I can not only kind of tap tempo, all of my tempos in, song to song, but I can even just reach down, turn the knob, and set it exactly where I want it for each individual song. And then over here, this is what I use to talk to the band, talk to the crew, and switch between all of my pages from my iPad if we have to like work on new songs, like when we just did Radio City, and we've got 100 songs to learn. All of it's in there if I've got to read it. And then there's always on my desk, there's always coffee, there's always hand sanitizer. I've got picks, capos, ebos, more picks here, slide, my microphone for band and crew, and then my singing microphone. So when you see me tap dancing over here, that's all I'm doing, trying to kind of manage this stuff, but make sure that the band knows where we need to be, make sure we're on the same page, and make sure that all my tones are right. So thankfully, I've got an incredible crew of guys here that help me out and make sure that, you know, I don't have to think too much about that. So if the French horn's out of tune, I don't have to worry about whether or not my guitar is going to show up on time. Trevor's always got my back. So that's pretty much the rig from top to bottom. You know, if you have any questions, please feel free to kind of write in, and I really appreciate you taking the time with me, and hopefully I'll get a chance to do another one before 10 years goes by. Take it easy. We had to take a little bit of break because Josh came to sound check, and also I wanted to cut this again because my wife told me I look like a hobo in the other videos. So this is just to give you a sense of some of the gain staging and structuring. I decided to go with my Gold Tyler to start with, just to give you a sense of kind of what it sounds like through the microphones. And this is basically clean with nothing on. You see I'm on the bridge pickup, clean with nothing on. If I kick on the compressor, you'll hear, this is the compressor. So you'll actually hear, right? So that's kind of the level of compressor of the Cali 76. If I go to the RC booster, it's just a little boost. So this is from front pickup. Just give me a little boost. This is basically the clone. So you can hear how rocking that is. This is the Winford. And that's kind of my my guitar player comes to save the day or beer set tone. If I got to take leads. And then this is the shanks, which is a little darker sounding, and then I did talk about this before, but this is the Korg STD 3000, which I use for my kind of edge type of sounds. And I'm going to get into that in just a second to give you a sense of what I mean. But that's basically the gain staging using this guitar. Let me show you a tone using all this stuff in conjunction. Hold on. So I wanted to actually show you this sound, especially with this guitar. This one sounds very bright, has a preamp I talked about with Michael Thompson. And you can hear, if I slap it, that stereo effect, even though the microphones are relatively close together because of that side rejection. So when I play something like this, the or when I play swell, you can hear how clean all that stuff reads. Let me give to you really quickly. Oh, hey, hi, buddy.
Are you doing a thing?
Oh, I was.
I'm
But
so sorry,
are you in the back of it? Oh, that's great. Hi, come on out.
Sorry.
No, it's all right. So, as you can imagine, I've had to kind of stop and start, so you'll see me in a third outfit today. What it is because I'm also the musical director of this organization, people have needed things, so I've had to stop. So I'm going to walk through really quickly a couple of patches. The first one I want to talk through is what I use when I typically am going for kind of an edge type of sound. There's a long story behind this, but I'm using my Korg STD 2000, and I might have actually talked about this a little bit before, STD 3000, excuse me. That's actually in the rack. What I'm doing here is I am using, this is actually the clean sound, right? Oh, this is a little bit of delay. But what I'm doing is I'm using this Herdem pick, which gives a little texture. So the basic idea behind especially the edge clean sounds is a textured clean. So because I'm using the ridged part of this, you can hear that it's got a little ridge versus a flat pick. So what I'm doing is I will tap the tempo. I'll actually add a little bit of boost and the STD. How it kind of opens up, and then I'll even add the Vemurem shanks, the 3-knob, and when you roll back the volume, it almost gives you this high-end sheen. Right. You can hear that kind of crunch. So that's kind of how I typically will get some of that kind of edge clean sound. And I want to show you another thing on the White Falcon with the Gracie stand so you can get a sense of how both of those work in tandem. So I'll come right back. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about a couple of tones with the White Falcon and how I use the Gracie stand. So with the White Falcon, at like the top of You Raise Me Up, I do this EBO thing with delays, where you notice I'm on the front pickup with the mud switch on, and I'll get a chord going, and then with the EBO. That's what it sounds like. So what I'll do is I'll do that. I'll switch over to my chorus sound, but then when I step forward into my acoustic, you can actually hear the acoustic. Right, so when I go to strumming, you can hear that I play the acoustic. Then I actually roll the roller cable up to do the first lick. And then at the end of the song, I've got a lick in F. So I literally use this to transpose from song to song, or from chorus to bridge to like the end, because it changes so many keys. And then I go to this sound on the White Falcon, which is a grit sound. But you'll notice with the White Falcon, it sounds fuller, low-endy, almost fuzzy. So it's got this. Sounds kind of fuzzed out, but it fills out the orchestra and it has a certain presence to it. And that's one of the reasons I've used this for more of the modern stuff over the course of the past years versus my Tyler that sounds a little tighter, a little more 90s and whatnot. So I'm going to show you one more thing with acoustic, and then we should be done with this section. So when I was talking about acoustics and I was talking about why I run the rig the way I run the rig, the only way I'm able to do that is now that they've developed these incredible pickups for some of these acoustic guitars. So this is a bags that I put in here. But the great thing about this is when I play it directly through, you can hear all the wood around the note. You can can actually hear the depth of it. You can hear the air around the note. Right? And so for me, when you can hear that vibrato and hear the delicate nature of it, and you can really hear, like, even if I do something like a rasgueado where I'm going, right, and you can actually hear the dynamic part of it, this is literally just going straight into a DI, straight to front of house. That way he has everything he needs, and then back there I just have them EQ it for my ears to make the most sense. So that's a really basic run through of all my rig and kind of all my gear. I could do more stuff, but just wanted to give you a sense of how it's run, how it's working, how I pick tones, why I do the things I do, and how it works with the Josh Groban cam. And the great thing about the rig is because it's modular the way it is, if I'm going out with Bette Midler or any of the other artists that I have tended to work with, or David Foster or something, I can customize the rig based on guitars, amplifiers, all of that stuff, and still use the basic same architecture to make it all work. So thanks so much for checking this out, and you take care, and hopefully I'll see you soon.